y'all, come look at this.
Yeah, boy.
Go crazy. Go stupid. Ah!
What's up, y'all? Skyrider here. I can't wait to make this video, man. I'm gonna start off by saying major spoiler alert, because I know the movie just came out. So for the sake of those who haven't seen it yet, I'd advise you to go see it or bootleg it. Do whatever you gotta do. Go on Movie Box or 123 Movies. Do whatever you gotta do. Watch the movie first and then come back to this fine piece of media. But for those who have seen it, indulge. When I tell you this is the best Spider-Man movie I've seen in a minute, serious. This how I was looking walking towards the theater looking like a diesel. In my opinion, I feel that this is the best Spider-Man, live-action Spider-Man movie of all time. I feel like when people get the question who's the best live-action Spider-Man, people say Tobey, and I feel like people say that only because he's the OG, but I feel like people need to give Tom his flowers. I think that Tobey was better at being Peter Parker, Andrew was the best at being Spider-Man, and Tom Holland is like the best of both worlds. I love the way that I love what they're doing with his character right now. But without further ado, let's get it. The way the movie starts off, it took me back straight to 2014 when I was a little boy and I was in the theaters watching Amazing Spider-Man 2, because you can see the inspiration and the influence taken from Andrew's Spider-Man, the way he swings and the way the camera moves and the way that the movie is shot, especially with the sort of aerodynamic stuff that they have him do. I really do love it a lot. Here's a couple of comparisons as example. Like, I immediately caught it as I was watching the movie. I was like, this is literally TASM 2 reborn, but like a little bit better. You can also see them paying homage to Insomniac Spider-Man with the way he maneuvers and mantles. And in this scene where Spider-Man is interacting with the Punisher, it also shows their chemistry, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, when did they build this dynamic off camera? But I guess it kind of makes sense, because in the cartoons and in the comics, Spider-Man and Punisher has always had like a connection. Even though I'm not too familiar with the comics, and I also caught the TASM 2 reference here. And I think that the references and the themes that they use from the previous Spider-Man movies is what Tom was kind of hinting at in one of his interviews, where he was saying how, when he said this, I don't think he was like talking about just the suits. He might have been hinting towards the sense of morality and lessons that come within like Spider-Man stories and films and stuff. But he was talking about how he got to get a fitting for Tobey Maguire's suit and Andrew Garfield's suit, and he was talking about how they got like all these cool zippers and stuff that his suit doesn't have, and he kind of used that to make his suit better. And I most definitely feel like they did that with the story in this movie, and I really think it's cool. After Spider-Man maneuvers through traffic to get to the scene, that is when we run into Jean Grey. We aren't directly introduced to her, but she is seen controlling someone's mind telepathically. I'm not too familiar with Jean Grey, although I do have a lot of X-Men comics. I just don't read them like that, but I do know a little bit about her character. After doing some research, I found out that Spider-Man and Jean Grey does have quite some history. One of their early crossovers was in 1972, where they would team up alongside Morbius, and this dude Spider-Man gonna jump on top of Jean Grey, kiss her, and then run away. What is wrong with this man? Also in Spider-Man and the X-Men in 2014, where Peter Parker picks up a teaching gig at one of Jean Grey's schools for higher learning due to his connections with the X-Men roster. I feel like watching this movie from a perspective of somebody who doesn't really like know who Jean Grey is like that, it is also kind of cool to like be introduced to her character like this. I also think it's really cool how both of their intellectual abilities clash together, where Spider-Man senses Jean Grey even while not really specifically knowing what it is. In this clip, she's seen trying to invade Peter Parker's mind, but being pushed out due to his spider senses, and I guess having to do with his senses being heightened because of his DNA being mutated. And during this scene, Peter Parker is brought back to a memory with Aunt May trying to comfort him about his powers. And this sort of emotional moment is brought back and furthermore touched on as we explore Jean Grey's backstory and the conflict that Peter Parker is facing within himself. After running into Jean Grey, Spider-Man discusses the situation with Detective Jean D. Wolf. I think that's how you pronounce her name. That's what I always loved about Spider-Man. Not just Spider-Man, but other vigilante superheroes in general, how they have connections and allies with certain people that are connected to law enforcement. Also, in this scene where Spider-Man gets information from Yelena Belova, which Florence Pugh, I think that's how you pronounce her name, she returns to play as her. And a lot of people were complaining about that, but I don't really see why. I like how they utilize different characters, and having a standalone Spider-Man film is cool, but we don't really need to keep seeing the same characters and same villains being recycled over and over again. It's like, we've seen that already. We need something new. And even when they use like strictly Spider-Man characters, they use characters that we haven't really seen much of and stuff like that. And that's what I kind of like. And I kind of feel like that's why Tom Holland's Spider-Man is probably one of the closest, or probably the closest live action adaptation of Spider-Man that's like more comic accurate, or at least in this movie it probably is. Spider-Man arrives at the Department of Damage Control to meet up with William Metzger, and I'm not super enlightened on what goes on in the comics, but I know that Damage Control has something to do with battle cleanup and sort of anti-mutant agenda, if you will. And the way that they approach it in this movie, I like the concept of it. I sort of like the idea that mutants shouldn't be ashamed of their powers, but be aware that they should be using it for good and use it responsibly. Now, it's cool how it expresses that the monsters that we see, or the so-called villains, are just like us. They just don't really have guidance and stuff like that. And that's what I like about Spider-Man. I love the whole philosophy, and like I said this earlier, the sense of morality of it. And it kind of reminds me of like how Goku is in Dragon Ball. While Peter is on the phone with Detective Jean to create a plan to find Scorpion and to find who he doesn't know is Jean Grey yet, Ned Leeds walks into the store, and I didn't think they were going to involve Ned and MJ as much as they did, but I guess it's kind of necessary for the character arc that Peter is going through right now. Which it really is heartbreaking to see. Like, imagine, like, put yourself in Peter Parker's shoes, like watching somebody you truly care about, somebody that you called dang near every single day, turn into a completely different person. They don't even remember you. And it was very vital to Peter Parker's growth and development. But it also shows that, you know, every decision, every choice comes with an outcome, comes with a repercussion, and whether you like it or not, sometimes you just gotta pay that price. Peter follows Ned on a train to a house party that MJ is hosting. You can really feel how lonely Peter has gotten due to, you know, the decision he had to make in the last film, him having to make Doctor Strange cast a spell for everybody to forget him. And he really struggles to reclaim his place in society, since like the only thing he really has going on in his life is just being Spider-Man. While Peter is in Ned's room, he finds a whole bunch of pictures of Spider-Man on this board that Ned has. In a way, this might not be true, but I feel like in a way, regardless of the decision that Peter Parker had to make, every version of Spider-Man has their own, like, Gwen or MJ or Ned or Harry, which is something that's discussed within like the Spider-Verse and the chains that connect each Spider-Man together. And I think there's nothing that can truly separate those characters. They also converse about an app that Ned created called Spidey Tracker that keeps track of how close Spider-Man is in the vicinity. There's also something towards the end of the movie that I'll discuss later on in the video, because I feel like it proves my hypothesis. After Peter witnesses MJ and her new significant other, he storms out and we get a very impactful scene with Peter swinging in the rain. While doing so, he reminisces on the goals and plans he had with two of the most important people in his life, and his lack of desire to live with the agony of watching his dreams fall apart is spoken very clearly without words. It also reminds us of how potent the meaning of loss and responsibility is within Spider-Man, and how significant those two things are to to every single version of Spider-Man. When he gets back to his apartment, we revisit the note that Peter wrote for MJ, in which he struggles to approach her due to her not remembering him. And in this part of the movie is where we finally get to see the malfunction in his powers, which is caused by constant stress and mental instability. And it really reminds me of Spider-Man 2 when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was losing his powers. Me and a brother, a longtime friend, Jordan Stop Motion Studios, he also made a video on this. Go check it out. I'm going to put it in the description. We were both theorizing about how this would play out within the movie's plot. And he came up with the theory that essentially Peter Parker is using Spider-Man to run away from the harsh realities of Peter Parker. And I added the idea that Peter Parker could also be running from the nature of Spider-Man that is within himself, and both of us really weren't too far off. And later on in the movie, Jean Grey brings up the term muzzle.
Trying to muzzle me like you muzzle yourself?
Which I find very symbolic to Spider-Man's dilemma, especially because he made the power inhibitor chip that suppresses his mutating DNA, and he also uses it on Jean Grey, and he tries to use it on Hulk. Spider-Man encounters a random man in the street, and which is being controlled by Jean Grey, and I love how trippy it is because it just feels so ominous and like it's so tense. Like, it's something about that scene, and she starts hopping between people and controlling people's consciousness. It's discussed in the movie that her hopping distance can only be within 33 feet, and I feel like it was cool that they kind of added that, because in the comics, Jean Grey doesn't really have a limit to her hopping distance, but I guess like in the live action adaptation, it's like I guess with enough training she'll be able to control her powers a lot better. After stopping Jean Grey from finding MJ, he finds MJ and picks her up and finds her somewhere safe to stay. And this scene, just so jacked up. I don't know if she did this on purpose to mess with Peter, but it seems like MJ remembers who he is, and they have this little intimate kiss. And while he's hugging and crying on her shoulder out of relief, she says this.
Go ahead, Peter. Touch her. Hold her.
See, me personally, if I was Spider-Man in this situation, I would have threw her off the building. It's like it's really messed up. We finally get to encounter Jean Grey face to face, and what I find kind of funny about this is because I think Steve Lacy spoiled Jean Grey being in this movie.
And without spoiling anything, who is your favorite, or who are you most excited to see?
You know what? Jean. I like Jean.
Okay.
She's the villain, but like, there's a reason to her madness.
Okay. Is that a spoiler?
I like her. I like her character. I don't know why.
I'm starting to be convinced that Sony has like people spoiled the MCU movies, people that are part of these MCU movies to spoil them on purpose in interviews, like for promotion or revenue or something. I don't know. After Spider-Man uses the inhibitor chip on Jean, he goes back to Frank Castle's house where he kept MJ to keep her safe, to only find her with the note in her hand that he meant to keep away from her because he didn't know how to approach her. He then confesses his love to MJ and also explains why he had to make that decision and why he couldn't tell her. And what makes this scene so heartbreaking is that he has to cope with the sad truth that she doesn't love him back because she doesn't remember him. I feel like Peter Parker going through this is very important to his character development and plot, and then reintroducing Ned and MJ will kind of defeat that purpose, because later on in the movie he does kind of start to rekindle that light and he rebuilds the bond between him, Ned, and MJ. And I kind of feel like them putting those characters back in his life is what kind of cancels out that plot or that whole tribulation or whatever. But I'm not mad at it though. It is what it is. It's nice to see his character be happy for a change and not be tortured all the time. After Jean Grey is brought to the damage control facility, she ponders on a name called VMAX as she looks at a air conditioner label at the top of the ceiling, and when she finds out that her sister Sarah is the one that died in that room. Jean Grey and her sister face abandonment and discrimination due to their abnormalities, and this common theme is what we see in other media such as X-Men, Stranger Things, which is ironic because the actor Sadie Sink plays in that show too, and it sort of follows the same elements. And one of my personal favorite video games, Infamous. I feel like her point of view in this story is what somewhat helps Peter accept this new side of himself, because whether he likes it or not, it's a part of him.
So why don't you just be honest with yourself? Are you Peter Parker? Or are you Spider-Man?
I'm both. Kind of like what we see with the Hulk, and we see like a similar like dilemma where Bruce loses control of the Hulk, and even though Banner and the Hulk are two different people, the Hulk is still and will always be a part of Banner. And in the Immortal Hulk comic, it kind of shines light on that idea where the Hulk always has existed in Banner. Banner just created a Hulk to deal with the trauma of his father's abuse, in which the gamma radiation literally just brought Hulk to life. And while Jean Grey's inside of Peter Parker's mind, we're brought back to that memory of Aunt May, and Peter kind of counsels and helps Jean Grey understand that there's nothing wrong with her not being ashamed of her powers, but it's important for her to use them responsibly and with the right intent, and how important it is to let go of, how to address and let go of trauma and resentment. And before this movie came out, I heard a theory or like a speculation that Spider-Man was going to die in this movie, and during this scene, I literally thought that was what was going to happen. But when Frank shot at Jean Grey, and Spider-Man took the bullet like a real G. And that scene where he was coming out of the hospital and all those people were there to support him and stuff, that was a really cool scene, you know what I'm saying? It was real beautiful, real sentimental. But yeah, that is it for today. My honest review of the movie, 10 out of 10. It would be 100 out of 10, maybe 1,000 out of 10, maybe a million out of 10. I might be doing too much, but hey, man. Nah, but seriously, though, I feel like this movie is probably the best live-action Spider-Man film of all time. If you're talking about every Spider-Man film, including like the animated like ones, like Spider-Verse, I feel like top 3 is... Number 1 is Across the Spider-Verse, number 2 is Into the Spider-Verse, and number 3 is Brand New Day. But yeah, without being said, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss any video I'm making. I'll see you guys and dang. Yo, I believe that because that's funny. Yeah, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you won't miss any video I'm making. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye, I love you guys so much.